everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a dual book review. This is the first of a bunch I'm hoping to do on my channel where I review specifically in the fantasy and sci-fi genres. I think I'm gonna stick with that because I have been inspired by both Daniel Green and Murphy Napier's kind of content like this. I know Daniel hasn't really done one recently, but he does do them on his channel, and Murphy does as well, where they do like a specific review for 2 books. It's pretty straightforward. I don't know why I'm explaining it this much, but I wanted to give this a try because I love talking about books and, you know, reviewing them and giving them a little bit more time on my channel than you would usually get whether I read it during a reading vlog or if I mention it in a wrap-up. So without further ado, we're gonna get into this. This week's video, I'm going to be reviewing 2 fantasy books. One is a companion sequel and one is the first in a trilogy, and both of them are books that I have read so far in 2022 that I'm so excited to talk to you about. So the first one we're going to talk about is Temple of No God by H.M. Long. This is the companion sequel to Hall of Smoke, which you guys know I absolutely adore. And this sequel was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and it did not disappoint. Both books so far have been 5 stars for me. I absolutely love them unendingly. So this, as I said, is a companion sequel. So it is a sequel to the first one, but it is not necessarily something that you have to read in order. I suggest you read them in order because the first one has, you know, events that were 10 years before this one, and it follows the same character in both. It follows Hessa in both of these. I do suggest you read Hall of Smoke first, but you don't necessarily have to because the storylines don't necessarily connect other than the fact they're set in the same world. They're 10 years, 12 years later, and it follows the same main character, which is always fun, and you like get a little bit more backstory and stuff, but the way that the events of Hall of Smoke are set up in this make it fairly easy to read this on its own. All right, so this book specifically is about Hessa 12 years after the whole upheaval, which is the events of Hall of Smoke, which I won't spoil for you. We're just gonna call it the upheaval, and it is her now living a life where she's a high priestess of a god. She is living amongst the results of a new power that she kind of discovers in the first book, and kind of going from there. Her and her husband, which was an arranged marriage in this 12-year gap between Hall of Smoke and this one, they got married. In here, you kind of see their relationship from where it is like very kind of just like acquaintance level to just becoming a little bit closer and more personable and more friendly as the story goes on, which is really interesting. And I won't say that this has romance in it. It does have this very, very light romance plotline, but it's not focused on the romance at all. At the end of Hall of Smoke, there is a whole kind of political change that is also happening, but we don't really get to see that because in Hall of Smoke, we're focused more on the godly level of stuff, whereas in this one, you get more of a political aspect of things. In here, the Arpa Empire is kind of moving again. They were a big part of the first book, and in here, Hessa comes into contact with a new growing cult, we'll say, and is like new dangers on the rise. And she basically gets asked by one of the 3 people who are vying to be emperor of this place, of this kingdom kind of situation. She gets asked by one of them to basically help them become emperor. So that kind of sets us up, and there's this cult brewing in the background. It's kind of like a really super dangerous cult, and it seems like it goes against all laws of magic, and it is really cool. I just really like it. So yes, big keywords from this book is you have, of course, cults. We love to see it. We have political movements. We have magic, godly magic specifically, and we also have Vikings. And it's, I believe, Hannah Long herself kind of described it as a like Romans versus the barbarian kind of trope brought in, i.e. but we have the perspective of the barbarians because Hessa is from this northern kind of group of people, and they are considered barbarians by a lot of the world. So it was really interesting to see from their point of view. The best things out of this book, besides everything, because I absolutely love this book, are the continued just brilliant bits of description and world building. The character. I absolutely love the character. And there's like events and things that happen in this book that shook me and surprised me, which is so hard to do in books. So yes, I think that is as like spoiler-free as I can go without spoiling Hall of Smoke for you or Temple of No God, but I just absolutely love these books so much. And it's by a Canadian author, and Hannah is just a wonderful human being, and I'm so excited to see what she does with her writing. I know she's got another book in this world coming out next year, and then she's got another one scheduled to come out in 2024 as well. So she's got books coming out every year, and she's already got a little bit of a backlist, so you can, you know, catch up and get ready for Hollow Smoke number 3 and the 4th one, whenever that comes out. I'm not sure if it's going to be another Hollow Smoke book or if it's going to be one of her other books that she's been working on as well in a different world. Either way, I'm in. Her writing is exceptional, and I absolutely love the way that she crafts a fantasy book and fantasy world. So yes, if I haven't convinced you yet, I don't know what to say to convince you, but that this is one of my favorite fantasy books of all time. Now we're going to talk about the first in a trilogy that I very recently read, literally this past weekend, and that is The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. On its surface level is a new epic fantasy in a seafaring world. We'll just kind of state it there. This world has been at war for generations. In this world, their ships for all of their seafaring stuff are built out of the bones of dragons. Y'all know, as soon as I got that little bit of information, I immediately picked this book up because I just love dragons. And anytime you have something that has to do with dragons or like bones or anything like that, I'm just immediately entranced. So I picked it up because of that. And then I read a little bit further, and it says that dragons haven't been seen in over centuries. They've disappeared. So these people have been fighting in these ancient bone ships, which is so cool. The like clincher for this book and like the hook is that a dragon has been spotted for the first time in all these centuries, and that this dragon is like the linchpin for the war. I'm not sure that that's a really good description of the book, but that is what is on the back. This book is insane. Let me tell you a little bit about it. So first and foremost, I gave this a 4 stars. So it wasn't perfect for me, but I really enjoyed it. And there's many reasons why. So first and foremost, this book was just, it was told in a completely different way than I'm used to reading. I hearkened it in one of my reading vlogs recently to reading a Robin Hobb, but I'm not even sure if that's right, because I've read like 1.5 Robin Hobb books in my life, and I really want to read her Ship of Magic series, but this immediately was like, I bet you this is like the Ship of Magic series because it's on ships. So that's what my mind went to. But with Robin Hobb's writing, she writes in a first-person point of view with Fitz. Now this was not. It was a third-person point of view, a third-person limited point of view, so that it hovers over the main character, Joran, and his relationship to his new shipwife, which is kind of the word for captain in this book. That's like the equation. Mies, who basically defeats him in a battle to become shipwife, because he was shipwife previously. And so she kind of, you know, defeats him, becomes shipwife. So that's how we start, is him giving up that power to her. It follows Joran and his internal struggle, but it doesn't really touch on the internal struggle a whole lot. This is such a fascinating book. The only way I can really describe the narration is a like rolling wave or a rushing river of a narration. So like some fantasy books, you get to like really know the character and you get to experience the story with the character, right? So you're there, you're going through the story with them. This one, I would say, is more akin to watching a movie where you are witnessing the story. Even though you are witnessing it through this one character and their point of view in a limited way, it is still like you're hovering over it all. So that was really interesting to me because I've not really read a lot of fantasy books like that. And it had the flavor of a Robin Hobb style of writing. So it wasn't like super action-packed, but it was interesting enough that I kept going. Now I will say, even though the writing was interesting and quite good, I did have some issues with the writing. Specifically, there were a lot of sentences that just weren't complete sentences. And I'm an editor, so anytime a sentence isn't correct or there's something wrong with it, I am completely thrown out of a story, and which happens more often than not. So it's not something that I am super bugged about. This one I am though, because for example, we have a sentence like this: her mouth moving as she paced. That's not a sentence, right? The sentence would be her mouth moved as she paced, right? And then literally 2 sentences later, you have the feathers in her gray and blue and red hair glinting like lightning as in a far off storm. It's the ing verb makes it incomplete. So it was little moments like that where I was kind of thrown out of the story. So the writing isn't exactly perfect, which is one of the reasons why I didn't give it it wasn't like a new favorite of mine, because it did launch me out of the story many times when I came across an incomplete sentence like that. So that was one of my kind of qualms with it. I haven't read many piratey books in my life, and the ones that I have, or like the idea of piratey books, really intrigues me. Thinking of like comps for this other than Robin Hobb's Ship of Magic, because I don't really think I can use that as a comp, because, you know, I haven't actually read the Ship of Magic series yet, but in my head it is. It's a good comp for it because it's, you know, pirating, seafaring, and we're dealing with interesting ships. So another comp I would kind of give it would be like the world specifically of the Lies of Locke Lamora, not the narrative voice at all, because the narrative voice of Lies of Locke Lamora is very interesting. The world, though, feels a little similar. If you had like the landlocked version of this book, it probably would be quite like the Lies of Locke Lamora, because that book is set in a city, but it just felt like it. And it did also feel a little bit like the parts of Shades of Magic, Victoria Schwab's book, where you get Lila on the pirate boat. And it also felt like Pirates of the Caribbean, which I just love. The woman, Mies, the shipwife, she felt like Avantika from Critical Role's Campaign 2. If you guys know what that is, you know what that is, but like that's a reference that I know a very niche people would know. We start with Joran, who has given up his station as shipwife and has given it up to Mies. Now, Joran as a character, I didn't love because he was very weak and didn't really do a lot of things until he kind of transformed in the latter half. So he had a great character arc, but I didn't like him very much. And I really wish, I think this book would have been so much better if we had had a Mies point of view as well, if we got the shipwife's point of view, because she was my favorite. Ruthless pirate women are my favorite. So I would really, really have liked it better. And as I said at the beginning of this little bit of the review, these ships are made out of dragon bones. And in this world, there is a little bit of lore that like regular ships, bone ships they're called, are kind of given beacons of luck through what are called corpse lights and a trigger warning for death, and specifically infant death. You don't really see it, but it is mentioned a lot. And the fact that corpse lights are the bodies of newborn babies. Any firstborn child of a person are like given up to the sea, essentially. So your firstborn child in this world, if you have a baby, they will be given to the sea and they are murdered and used as corpse lights. But on Mies' ship, the Tide Child, that's what it's called, is a dead ship. So essentially, ship full of criminals and people who have been put on this ship to do nothing. And dead ships do not have corpse lights. They are just ships that kind of are painted black and are treated like scum and do like the dirty work for people. They're not pirate ships, even though they feel a little piratey in a lot of the stuff that they do in here. They're not necessarily pirate ships, because I know Mies says a lot in this book that she specifically is not a pirate. That little bit of lore is so interesting to me. But yeah, so I don't know why I mentioned that. Just so you know, as a trigger warning, infant death is a thing, especially this bit of lore in this world that it's like a beacon of luck. Like you need these corpse lights on your ship for things to go well. Very strange. They are piloting what is called a dead ship or a black ship, and they are tasked at the beginning of this basically to find this dragon, do stuff with it. So that is as much as I will say about the plot, and kind of as much as I'll say about the book itself. One last thing I will mention is, because I mentioned the world building specifically in Temple of No God, but the world building in this I really enjoyed. I loved seeing this world, but this was the typical fantasy, high fantasy book where you are just dropped in and expected to not drown, basically. They drop you in and you're like, okay, cool, follow along with the lingo. One good thing though about this book is that in the back there is an appendix which gives you a meaning for all the words they say. And I didn't know that this was a thing until I finished the book. And I flipped to the back and I was like, oh my God, there's an appendix that tells me what the hell a bone right is, or a bowspell, or like literally anything that they mentioned in this book that has to do with ships, like a deck child, or deck childer, deck mother, a guillame. Like, I just so interesting to have that lovely little, appendix in the back that tells you what it is. So it is like you're being dropped into a brand new fantasy world where you have to keep your head above water with all these terms that you don't really know, and because you are in a interesting narrative style that you can't really latch onto a character, you're just kind of watching the movie kind of situation, I can see it being a lot for people. So I would recommend this to people who love fantasy and who want to read like piratey books, but I wouldn't recommend it to someone who's starting out with fantasy. This probably won't be your best shot if you're just getting into fantasy, because it is overwhelming at the beginning. And it overwhelmed me, who is a fairly seasoned fantasy reader. I kept through it because I was very intrigued by the world building and the aspects of dragons. And I knew the hook in the back was that there was like a dragon that was found. And they're called Arquesians in this book, I will say. Arquesian or Arquesian. There's a lot of slang in this book that you do have to learn, which is why I love when fantasy books include a glossary in the back that tells you what things are happening. Anyways, I've been rambling about this book for so long. But yes, my friends, those are 2 fantasy books that I have read recently that I think you should read if you are at all interested in them, especially Temple of No God and Hall of Smoke, because they are some of my favorite fantasy books of all time. And I think that these are very accessible for reads for anyone with any fantasy experience at all. Like, just fabulous reads. I love them so much. I am obsessed with Hannah Long's World. Hall of Smoke World? Yes, please. Let me know down below any books that you want to see me review, because I will make a list of them and I will get to them as I go. I know I'm going to be having stuff like Malice by John Gwynne on this list. I want to also do sci-fi like Leviathan Wakes, which is the first in the Expanse series. So I'm open to reviewing any books that you guys want to see me review. Let me know down below what you want to see me review, and I will try to get to it, as I keep saying. If you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe and turn on the little bell icon so you know when I upload. I will catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.